Hello everyone, so today I and Ella will explain about assessing soft skills in grammar, vocab, and pronunciation. But first of all, I would like to explain what is assessing soft skills. So assessing is evaluate or estimate the nature, ability, or quality, while skills is the ability to do something well or expertise. So assessing soft skills is way of evaluating the ability to do something on particular things.
First of all, we'll be talking about the first step, grammar. So, according to Hughes, grammatical ability influences our other skills. As to be able to read, write, and speak well in English, we need to understand how to make sentences in well-structured grammatical orders. Now, these are the types of grammar tests according to Arthur Hughes and J.B. Hinton. The first type is multiple choice. This type usually has 4 or 5 options of answer, with following subtypes. Type 1 and 2, 3 are incomplete statement, where we have to choose one correct answer to complete a statement. Then, there is incorrect part, where we have to correct the italic word or phrase with one of the provided choices. Next is choosing one correct form. This type seems not to have any questions but 4 choices, where 3 of which are grammatically incorrect, and students have to choose the only one correct form. Next, short response is just like its name. One of the choices given is the right answer to respond to the question. Lastly, selecting the alternatives is choosing another form of the sentence that still represents the same meaning. The second type is gap filling, or fill in the blanks to complete the sentence. Usually, gap filling can be in different questions or is not related from one number to each other. It also can be in a form of one short passage. Paraphrase is the third type of grammar test. It is transforming or modifying a sentence into another form without changing the meaning. Here is the example of paraphrase. Usually, the instruction of paraphrasing will be given with the original sentence. For example, transforming past continuous into passive past continuous tense. The fourth type is completion. This type is used to assess variety of structures by completing sentences. As you can see in the example of completing here, it is for testing interrogative form. The last type is constructing combination and addition items, where linking sentences to one another by adding or combining the items to form new well-structured sentences. Take a look at this example. Number 1 is the example for combining items, where students need to join each pair of sentences with the word in brackets. And in number 2, as the example of adding items, students are instructed to insert the word in capital in the most appropriate place in the sentence.
And now move on to vocabulary. So based on Hayden, vocabulary assessment will help the teachers to get information on how much vocabulary learning has taken place in the class and whether the teaching has been effective or not. And then the second point, it is important to determine the reasons of assessing vocabulary to make the assessment precise. And then now you can see the dimensions of vocabulary assessment. So basically there are 6 boxes, and these are the boxes that we often know as the dimensions of vocabulary, or we may call it as the classification of the vocabulary assessment that we often get. And then the next one is about the types of vocabulary assessment. So today we will discuss 2 types of vocabulary assessments. The left one is about the discrete vocabulary, and then the right one is about embedded vocabulary. And in the discrete vocabulary, we have multiple choice, and then matching formats, sentence completion, or gap fills items, and also translation. While in the embedded vocabulary, we will have such as assessing vocabulary in reading comprehension, and then in writing, and also in speaking. And now move on to the examples. So example of multiple choice question for maths, it's divided into two items. So the first one I will discuss about the items A. So basically we know that the vocabulary is always going to be like synonym recognition word and isolation with the context. So most of all the multiple choice that we will have in the vocabulary assessment is something like this. And then next is about the multiple choice items B. So based on hidden, multiple choice is also giving us a question that is we must answer like this example. If you see, for number 1, I saw a nasty blah 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 between two cars in this morning, and we have to answer which vocabulary is fit in with the sentence. And now we move on to the example of matching format. So for the example of matching format, we are very often to see this kind of questions in our vocabulary assessments, and we have to match between the left and also the right one. And now for the example of job fills items, we often know it too because we have to fill in the blank. Sometimes we may call it so. We have to put the right vocabulary in the sentence too. It's kind of similar with the previous one, like matching format, but it's different because sometimes it's happen in a sentence. It can also happen more than one sentence. Sometimes it combines between one sentence, two sentences, and also three sentences, or maybe it can be like a short story. And then example of translation. So in translation, we often ask to give the definition or the other definition that is similar to the given questions that they ask us to do it. So for example, like teacher, student, actor, and also president. And then next, assessing vocabulary in reading comprehension. So we often know that in reading comprehension, we learn a lot of vocabulary, and that's one way of assessing vocabulary. As this example that you can see, what does the phrase talking nonsense probably mean? So actually they want to emphasize what is talking nonsense means. Something like this will make us improve our vocabulary too. And then next, we will discuss about vocabulary test validity and reliability. So the validity is there are two criteria of validative vocabulary. The first one is criterion validity, and then the second one is content validity. And then we have some specifications of content validity. As you can see here, that the test measures only a specific set of lexical items or wider population of vocabulary. And then this is the basis for the generalization, and it is supportable. And what word knowledge aspects are being addressed. And the last one, the test measure recall or recognition or receptive or productive levels of mastery. And then for the reliability, the test retest method, and then the other one is internal consistency method. And for the scoring rubric, I took it from the website. So basically there are two ways of scoring vocabulary assessment. So the left one is about holistic rubric, as you can see. So they have a range from 1 to 6. So 1 is entering, and then 6 is the most high reaching. So you met all the criteria. While the analytic rubric is from 7 up to 20. So 7 up to 9 is very poor, while 18 up to 20 is excellent to very good. And the conclusion for vocabulary, so vocabulary is basically the aspect of learning in a language. And also assessing vocabulary, we have to consider several points such as the reasons and then the dimensions. Therefore, we can use appropriate types of vocabulary assessment to measure the student's vocabulary mastery.
The last sub-skill is pronunciation. According to J.B. Hinton, to have a meaningful conversation, what is being said must be understood by both the speaker and the hearer. And firstly, it will be easily understood if what is being said is clear. Therefore, good pronunciation is the key for clarity and accuracy, where we get to pay attention to intonation and stress of the words. Here are the types of pronunciation tests according to J.B. Hinton. The first of all is reading aloud. Hinton stated that this type is generally used to assess pronunciation as distinct from the total speaking skills. The passage can be in various forms and topics.
And now we move on to the second type, which is single object pictures. So this type can be used for testing the production of significant phoneme contrasts. Meanwhile, usually the picture with bigger scale, for instance the picture of a scene or an incident, is used to assess total speaking skills. And the final type is role play. In role play, while the students are assigned with role and are required to be as creative and communicative as possible. So the examiners will be observing and assessing the use of English, and one of which is accuracy.
Now we are moving on to the sub-skill tests that we've had in English department. The first one is for grammar, fill in the blanks. Students are asked to fill in the gaps to complete the sentence only with the providing items, which are another, other, others, the other, and the others. There are 15 questions in this test. The strengths of this test are, firstly, it has little scope for the students to answer as they are already provided with choices that can be used to fill the blank spaces. And secondly, scoring is easy and reliable as there is only one correct answer for each gap. While the weakness of this test is, it may be confusing for some students since the number of questions there are too many. Thus, the test would be not reliable from the side of the students. The second test is combining sentences and adding items. Students are instructed to combine a group of sentences into one correct sentence and also adding punctuation into the sentences. There are 10 numbers of questions for this test. The strength of this test is it is flexible for the students as they can choose how they want to combine and add items into the sentences as long as the form is correct. And the weakness is it would take a long time in correcting and scoring as there can be more than one correct form of each sentence.
And now the sub-skill test for vocabulary in English department. The first one, we have matching items. So matching items, like the example that now we watch it, it's often for us to find it in the reading, and also sometimes it happens in the other subjects such as literary genre. And the strength of this kind matching items is saving time. It is also easy to conduct and efficient means of assessing the association between a variety of items within a given topic or a category. And the weakness is, first, it doesn't produce any vocabulary and it just simply matches given words, so we do not have something like critical thinking toward the vocabulary. And then second, it may limit assessment to lower level of understanding because of we just simply translate, we just simply match the item. And the second one is multiple choice, synonym, or paraphrase. So for this kind of test, there are two examples here, the upper and the bottom. So it is very often to find in the English department. For the first one, for the example that he was irate when he heard about the new plans, it is also often for us to find it in the reading test and also the lower one. And the strengths, the students get many new vocabulary, and then it's subjectively scored items, and then achievement can be compared from class to class and year to year since it's multiple choice, so that's going to be work for that. While the weaknesses is the time consuming to construct, so it's rather difficult for the teacher to make the questions and also the multiple choice, and these are particularly subject to cluing.
Now we are going to talk about pronunciation test. The first one is role play. Students are provided into groups and each group gets a scenario with the roles of each character in the play. The students then have to make and improve their own lines or dialogues based on the provided scenario and perform the play in front of the class. The strength of this test is it can be assessed directly from the students' performance as they are going to use their English speaking there. On the other side, the weaknesses are it may be time-consuming for the students to construct and develop the play, and the scoring may also be subjective.
And now move on to the second type, which is speech, and we have the speech in speaking tree, which is we have to speak in front of a lot of people, and we are commended by the judges. And for the strength, we know that the speech can be assessed directly from the performance, so it will be fair for the judges and also those who do the speech. They will receive the direct feedback at that time. While the weaknesses are it is time consuming to construct the speech because we need a lot of time before we perform, and then the second, it is too subjective, so there's no pattern criteria on that assessment.
Finally, this is the improvement we suggest for the test. Firstly, for grammar, we suggest to cut the number of gap-filling questions into 5 until 10 numbers only, so the students will not be confused with too many questions. And for the second test, we also suggest to give less number of questions, either for combining section or other section of the whole test, since usually in a grammar test there could be 4 until 5 sections with different types. So, the scoring process will be less time-consuming, and also the students will not be exhausted of answering too many questions.
Now we're going to talk about the improvement for vocabulary. So first of all, I would like to say that do not just paraphrase the vocabulary, but the teacher should also giving students a picture of the vocabulary so that the students can memorize it longer. So for example, we are not only simply give the sentence or the words and then we should paraphrase or looking for its synonym, but sometimes we also have to add picture in there so that the students will recognize, the students will visualize the vocabulary itself and they will memorize it longer. And then the second one, giving students story or article one upper level to trigger them to search the meaning. So for example, like in English department in reading 5, we have a story and article, and sometimes it's also journal for us to read, and then we highlight a new vocabulary that we do not understand or we do not know before, and then we should translate it in other way to make the sentence become coherent each other. And last but not least is improvement in pronunciation. So first, having a pattern criteria for the assessment. So the teacher should limit what will they assess in pronunciation. For example, they will assess about the styles, the way they speak, and then the accent or maybe dialect, and also the way they pronounce the words itself. And the second one, the teacher should also understand the right pronunciation, because not all teachers are using the standard one. For example, like in our university, we use the US style. So for those teachers who do not use the US style, please don't be biased to correct our pronunciation to the accent that you use. For example, like Singapore accent or maybe the other accent.
Alright, that's all from us, Group 5. Thank you for bearing with us. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. Don't forget to stay home and wash your hands. Stay safe. Thank you.